I'm so sick of 17. Where's my fucking teenage dream? She screams in the car at a crusty 22. Hi besties, welcome. How are you? Today, I hope that your day feels like when you get into bed with clean sheets and you've just shaved your legs. Yep, that's what I hope it feels like baby dolphins swimming around in your bed. I know, it was too far. It was too far. But today, I'm gonna tell you what book you should read based off of albums that you like and enjoy. Two things that are unrelated, but I will force together in a beautiful symphony of recommendations. Let's just start with number one on the Hot Billboard 100.
Ladies and gentlemen, Olivia Rodrigo!
Olivia Rodrigo is taking over the world, and we are all her little loyal subjects. She is 18, and it deeply upsets me because it puts into stark light how little I've done with my life in my 22 years here on this planet. But it is brilliant, and it does make me feel like I am 17 filled with angst and going through a breakup. So thank you, Olivia, for giving me that. Somebody much younger than me sent me a meme the other day. This meme. How old do people think that I am? Granted, this album, the target demographic is younger than I am, and I understand that, but I don't care, I still bop. If you love Sour by Olivia Rodrigo, you should read Dress Codes for Small Towns by Courtney Stevens. There's so much about these two that go together. For one thing, Dress Codes for Small Towns is a young adult book, and Sour is arguably written for young adult people. This book is angsty, it's sad, it's also funny and very punk grunge. Like, it's got all of the same tones that Sour has. I read this book when I was younger, and it gave me the same feeling that Sour has given me. There are also relationships in this book. I couldn't recommend a book for Sour that didn't have relationships and relationship troubles in it, because that is what is at the root of this album. The main character, she's grappling with gender identity, sexuality, the performance that is gender, all of these things, but she's doing it in this like small conservative town. I'm pretty sure her dad is a pastor, but it's also really funny, and I feel like all the characters in that book would scream brutal in the car driving down the highway at 2 a.m. Number two.
Ladies and gentlemen, Taylor Swift!
Folklore by Taylor Swift. Have you heard of it? Probably. The book that goes with Folklore, it's Normal People by Sally Rooney. I know for a fact that Taylor Swift really loves Sally Rooney, so I do believe that Normal People inspired Folklore. Maybe that's a conspiracy theory that I'm starting, but I think it's correct. Like, some of the songs on Folklore, I can't listen to them without thinking of Marianne and Connell. Illicit Affairs, Invisible String, Cardigan, all of them. Peace, oh my god, literally every song on the album, are you kidding me? And it gets the tone right too. This kind of like warm, but cold. Cozy, but there's a lot of pain underneath the surface of that. And while we're talking about the Folklore era, we must also mention Evermore.
Once again, Taylor Swift.
Evermore is Taylor Swift's most recent album, and carrying on with Sally Rooney, I'm just gonna recommend Conversations with Friends if you loved Evermore. Conversations with Friends is Taylor Swift's favorite book, I believe. Gold Rush is about Nick. That is Frances singing about Nick. You can't tell me that it's not. Tolerate it, absolutely. Also, Evermore in No Body No Crime has some Killman energy, and so does Conversations with Friends. In my head, it's about Frances and Nick, and I think that Taylor Swift, in my head, will now forever be associated with Sally Rooney's books. If you like Evermore, read Conversations with Friends. If you like Conversations with Friends, listen to Evermore, and then tell me if I was right. I was. Next.
Ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable Billie Eilish.
When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? By Miss Billie Eilish. A question I've been thinking about ever since I read that album title. I don't know the answer, but Otessa Moshfegh might. The pairing for this one is My Year of Rest and Relaxation. The main character in My Year of Rest and Relaxation tries to sleep for a year as an avoidance tactic, so as not to deal with her mental illness and her depression and anxiety and some grief that she's going through in her family. So she gets a bunch of different psychiatrists and gets prescribed a bunch of different sleeping pills and tries to sleep for a whole year and thinks that when she wakes up, maybe she will be new and like these things that have been plaguing her won't be so severe, yeah, etc, etc, etc. But additionally, the tones and themes in both pieces of work are similar. Like, they're both dark but have levity. Like, My Year of Rest and Relaxation is super dark. I mean, it's about a woman who's trying to avoid her entire life by taking copious amounts of medicine that could kill her. When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go is a dark album. It has like dark musical themes and it has songs like Listen Before I Go and I Love You that are just like a gut punch of sadness and pain. When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? If you want to find out, read My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. Number 5.
Ladies and gentlemen, Harry Styles!
Fine Line by Mr. Harry Styles. I couldn't choose a book that wasn't one of my favorite books of all time because Fine Line is one of my favorite albums of all time, and I wanted to choose a book that I love as much as I love that album. I have chosen I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. I love this book so much with my whole soul. I'll Give You the Sun is about twins Jude and Noah, and it's written in 2 different timelines. So when it's in Jude's perspective, it's a few years after the perspective that we get when it's Noah, and you get them like one after the other, so you're kind of piecing together the events of what have happened. Also, if you want proof as to how much I love this book, I tabbed all of the lines that I loved. In I'll Give You the Sun, one of the main characters does not get into an arts high school that they applied to, and it's really devastating for them. And it's so colorful. Like, not only is the cover obviously colorful, but when I think about this book, I think in colors. Like, it's very bright. Fine Line to me also has that same kind of theme, this colorful theme. Not only with like songs like Golden, literally talking about colors, but there's so much fruit imagery and summer imagery that in my mind it just makes the album very colorful. Also, it feels like it has a similar arc. I also think they're both incredibly poetic. I think Harry Styles' lyrics throughout Fine Line are just so good. And this book is prose, don't get me wrong. Like, it is prose. It is not written in verse, but it read like a poem in the best way. Next!
Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Phoebe Bridgers.
Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers. For this album, I chose The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. And the reason I did that is because if you're a big fan of Punisher, or if you're a big fan of Sylvia Plath, and especially if you're a big fan of both, you need therapy. Now, this is coming from somebody who loves Phoebe Bridgers and loves Sylvia Plath and goes to therapy frequently. You should think about it, just letting you know. Punisher and The Bell Jar are both tough. They both touch on mental illness. There's literally a song on Punisher called Graceland 2 that's kind of a story about this girl who is out of a psychiatric ward, and the protagonist of The Bell Jar spends a significant amount of time in a mental hospital. If you liked one, you'll like the other. Next, I have a question for you. Why men great till they gotta be great?
Ladies and gentlemen, Lizzo!
That's right, we're talking Lizzo. Now, this was one I had to really think about because I was like, we need women power, we need confidence, we need hating men. We need to hate men. And what book does that better than Circe by Madeline Miller? Literally, I think the phrase, why men great till they gotta be great, is the thesis statement of Circe. You might have heard of Circe or the myth of Circe if you had to read the Odyssey in school, because Odysseus and his little ship go to Circe's island where she's been exiled, and she kind of seduces the men and lures them in and then turns a bunch of Odysseus's army into pigs. Not to be dramatic, but she's everything that I wish to be and more. Circe takes no shit from any men. In this book, you know, she'll get what she needs from a man and then tell him to get the fuck off her island. And that is the kind of energy that we should all be bringing. And also, it's a really cool reimagining of a lot of the characters that you probably knew from your Greek myth phase that we all had in middle school, Percy Jackson. So it's fun to read because you'll like know some of the characters, but it's also accessible if you don't. If you didn't read the Odyssey, if you weren't a Percy Jackson kid, if you don't know anything about Greek mythology, you can still read it and fully understand it because Madeline Miller does a great job of giving you the background that you need within the context of the novel. It's badass, just like Lizzo. And it's absolutely a celebration of women and the power that they hold and how much men suck. Next, had to get my tissues for this one. We're talking about Red.
Ladies and gentlemen, Taylor Swift!
Red is an underrated Taylor Swift album, and I think every song on the album is an absolute banger. And for this one, this might be a little controversial, okay? If you love Red, I recommend Pride and Prejudice by Miss Jane Austen. Both are they're romantic, but they're not saccharine. Some albums are overly sweet about love, and I don't think Red is that way. Like, Red captures the kind of whirlwind romance, but also has like a solitary kind of power that I think Lizzie Bennett has. The Last Time, Everything Has Changed. So many of these songs in my head are just like Darcy, Lizzie, Darcy, Lizzie, Darcy, Lizzie. Or Jane and Bingley. Stay, Stay, Stay. Everybody yelling at Lydia when she's running away from the family and eloping with evil Mr. George Wickham. If you like Red, you'll like it. You'll like it. If you don't want to read the book, just watch the movie with Keira Knightley. Next.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lord.
Melodrama by Lorde. Our Lord and Savior. This album goes with The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This is not just because the first song on Melodrama is Greenlight and that is the biggest symbol in all of The Great Gatsby. I promise, that's not the only reason. I think they match up so well because I feel like the first few tracks, like the first 3 tracks of Melodrama are like the beginning of The Great Gatsby, where it's this glorification of wealth and partying and drugs and alcohol and all this stuff that ultimately leaves you unfulfilled. And then like the Louvre to me feels like the pocket of time in which Gatsby and Daisy are like thinking about their past. It's romantic and you feel like, oh my god, these two belong together. And then it kind of shifts into liability and hard feelings and like Rider in the Dark and into this like dark underside in which someone gets fucked over. I think that one's so good. Now, because I can't talk about Melodrama without talking about Pure Heroine, that's next.
Once again, Lord.
Pure Heroine to me is the defining album of this like generation of kids that grew up in the suburbs. The book to me that best fits with Pure Heroine is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. They're both just such great encapsulations of what adolescence feels like in the good moments and in the really shitty ones as well. The Perks of Being a Wallflower is one of the best books I've ever read in terms of representation of young people, how they actually are and behave and what they experience, and also how complex their feelings are, often written off by adults. And I think Pure Heroine kind of hits on that same thing of like young people celebrating the moments of that are great and lamenting the moments of that are not so great. I also think Ribs by Lorde would be a great tunnel song. When the characters like go through the tunnel and they sing really loudly and they're in the truck and they're like standing and they're flying. Ribs would be so immaculate in that moment. I do think Lorde's third album can be paired with the next Game of Thrones novel because we're all gonna die before either of them come out. Next.
Ladies and gentlemen, Frank Ocean.
Blonde by Frank Ocean. The level of beautiful that this album is can only be compared to one book, and that is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. The Song of Achilles is maybe my favorite book of all time. I want to get a tattoo from it. So that's how much I love it. And it is also a Greek myth reimagining of the story of Achilles and his lover Patroclus and their experience as like young boys growing into adults, and then the Trojan War. So Blonde by Frank Ocean deals with queerness and queer identity. So does Song of Achilles. The happy moments of Blonde, like Ivy, like Pink and White, feel so similar in tone as the love scenes and like the high moments of Song of Achilles. But then the darker moments, the low moments, feel just as devastating in the album as they do to the book. Also, Achilles is blonde, so that's something. Anyway, that was so much fun. Maybe I'll do another one in the future with different albums and different books. So if you have albums that you want me to listen to and then recommend you books based off of, put them down below and I will take them under advisement. Also, if you think I'm wrong about any of these, or if you have recommendations that go with any of the albums that I mentioned, please let me know what they are because I will devour them. If you liked this video, you can give it a little thumbs up. And if you want to see more from me in the future, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I think that's it. In case you haven't heard it today, I love you. Bye.